Hi, my name is Mike, and I'm here to read a comic. And today's comic is Peter Parker, The Spectacular Spider-Man, Annual Number 4, dated 1984. Because this is an annual, it's good for the entire year. I'm going to take a look at the cover. It's clearly an issue that is not focused on Spider-Man, but it's focused on Aunt May. Aunt May was there since day one, looking quite dried up, looking kind of like an image of George Washington. But nevertheless, she's a character that persisted, and she's persisting to this day. It was a character I was never really fond of that much. She kind of felt annoying. She felt like the person that if you were told that you do this very simple thing, you will get $1 million. Aunt May would be whining and crying how you need to hold her hand rather than getting that $1 million. That's the type of character she seemed like to me. And she did have a few spotlights. I think the most infamous, I think, was a Marvel 2-in-1 where she was the golden oldie. And I remember there was a story that in the 90s that it looked like they were going to kill off the character, and it was actually beautifully done. But then they came up with this convoluted nonsense that was really an actress who was better at being Aunt May than the actual Aunt May, and they brought the old bat back. I'm going to include this in my the many loves of Spider-Man, simply because he did love his Aunt May. And we see also a picture of a drawing, I should say, of Uncle Ben here. Uncle Ben here, he snitches out the criminal element in this story, but later on he was written as being a part of the criminal element where he was doing things with young Peter he should not have been doing. I do not acknowledge that. I've never read those issues. This issue actually was beyond me because I had stopped reading comics at this point, for the most part, except for issues that I wanted to read as a kid. But I don't acknowledge that. Uncle Ben, he had his hands on Aunt May, who was oddly desirable in the Marvel Universe. One of the earliest Spider-Mans I remember was issue 1, I think it was 131, where we see Dr. Octopus marrying a very happy, very decrepit Aunt May. I don't know what Doc Ock was thinking of. Again, maybe he's always looking for the money. So maybe looking at all those images of George Washington on the $1 bill got to him. So we're gonna take a look at the cover. We see an image of a very young Aunt May. The dates are kind of screwed up because I got the idea that this was in '84 and the events involving Aunt May were occurring in 1934. But Peter is Aunt May's nephew, and he's kind of young. So we're seeing an image of Aunt May's mom. I'm thinking, holy crap, no way that woman had another child like 20 years later. Particularly in 1934 with what was deemed modern medicine back then. So anyway, this guy, he's kind of having a shootout, and he has Aunt May by his side, kind of hugging her, saying, hey, check it out. I'm going to shoot these guys. Are you impressed, Aunt May? And then we see a version here, and the split screen, there's Spider-Man here, and he's protecting Aunt May from being shot at. And we're told on the cover, before she married Ben Parker, Aunt May loved another man, a criminal. And now he's back. And if he can't have her, no one will. I honestly, a guy spends 50 years in prison and he wants to hook up with Aunt May. Sure.
I know a lot about her. 10 years, you thought about Janice? There are men in the camp better looking than my sister.
So I'm going to go into the story. So there's no traditional splash page. I think it's on the next page. So it kind of opens up with this robbery happening in place, based on the building that they're focusing on. I'm guessing this is 72nd Street on Broadway here, and it looks like there's a gang of crooks who are looking to rob the place, but they're doing so from the bottom up, and they're kind of so they realize that this is a weak point in the building where they're kind of digging out from under. Also, they're using a flame torch here, which is kind of dangerous because they're in the sewers here. They're in the sewer system here. I mean, there is flammable vapors in the sewer. But nevertheless, they're able to go through it. I don't see the creative team on this page just yet. The robbers are kind of arguing amongst themselves. One of them is saying, "Hey, can you hurry up?" And the guy with the blowtorch is saying, "Listen, I can't affect physics here. This is what we have, and you're going to have to be patient here." Turn the page. It's also kind of a rainy night, so being in the sewer is less desirable than it normally would be. I'm going to turn the page. So anyway, the crooks break into the vault. One of them is very surprised there's a lot of money here. He says, "Look at all that money. Look at it. They have money in here." It looks like the mastermind, who's kind of an older guy, he's whispering for him to be quiet. They're all whispering at this point, even though a couple of them don't understand why, because their attitude is, it's the middle of the night. There's nobody in this bank, not even a security guard. And even if there was a security guard, they're not going to be hearing what we're saying because we're in the vault. But the mastermind saying, "Hey, listen, this job hinges on silence. Here, I'm the guy who planted. I know what I'm doing, and if I tell you to shut up or lower your voice, you do it." And so anyway, the mastermind here is being very cautious here. So they're making a big deal, like this is their big score. This is the score that will have them retired in Bermuda or somewhere like this. So they don't want to ruin it. So, and the other two guys, okay, we're gonna go along with it to make you happy. So they're being very quiet amongst themselves. They're exiting the bank here. So they're carrying out the loot, kind of like the way the guys in Pelham 123 did. And they're almost out. Guy, heads for the manhole cover. He's climbing up that ladder. He opens the lid, those lids are quite heavy, so there's no way this guy's doing one arm. The guys are out of the manhole, they're out of the sewer, and then suddenly they see a shadowy figure looming over them. I'm gonna turn the page, and it turns out to be Spider-Man, and this is the black outfit Spider-Man. I remember I actually did buy the comic for the Spider-Man in the new outfit. Apparently the story is, and there might be two stories about this, was that the black outfit, one, might have been designed with Hollywood in mind. Because one of the problems that Hollywood had with adapting these comic book stories were the outfits. Because, you draw them, they look great, but if you're using cloth in a live action production, you're going to see the wrinkles. It's going to look kind of cheesy and silly rather than cool on the page. Neil Adams spoke about capes when he talked about Batman, and he had explained that he found capes to be absolutely ridiculous. He would see them in real life in movies. He said, "These things are so fucking stupid." But one thing he did notice, particularly with the Hammer films and Christopher Lee, was that whenever they showed say, Christopher Lee in the cape, they always picked the edits that made him look good. So Neil Adams' opinion was that 99% of the time you're going to look ridiculous in a cape. But 1% of the time, things are going to work out nicely and you look super cool. And Neil Adams said to himself, those are the moments I'm going to draw. So whenever he drew someone with a cape, he always made sure it was like at the coolest possible pose to do so. So the thinking is that maybe Hollywood would have a better time, say, dealing with Spider-Man if he were in all black, rather than the historical, famous brand name costume. And I think Nicholas Hammonds, who done a promo, I think he actually was in the black outfit for a Spider-Man series that never got off after the first one was canceled. And the second story, and I think it was one told by Jim Shooter, that it was actually a fan who had suggested it. And he had liked the suggestion, and to make things official, I think Jim Shooter had sent the guy $300 with the idea that, hey, listen, you accept this money, we're kind of making a business deal. So if the kid who got the check, he cashed it, and then later on he tried to go to court, Jim Shooter's going to point to that check and saying, hey, this guy cashed the check, and we told him it's for this particular idea you came up with. He sold it to us. Shut the fuck up. That's how Jim Shooter kind of operated. So those are the two stories behind the black costume. I had read some stories with the black costume, but not in '84. So anyway, I'm going to take a look at the creative team. Bill Mantlo is the writer. He did a fine job here. Bill's very controversial in comic book circles because he had a lot of fine moments, but he also had a lot of hack moments. And because he was the Marvel fill-in guy, he was often doing fill-in issues, and the quality varied. He was definitely the most Silver Age of the Marvel writers. But nevertheless, he wrote a good story. Whenever Bill gets very personal, and like I said, I'd met him when I was a kid, his stories tend to be very, very engaging because he brings a lot to himself into the story. The art is by Kerry Gammill. I'm not familiar with his artwork because, again, I had aged out of comics at this point. And he's also being helped by Sal Buscema. Sal sadly passed away about a week ago. And I wasn't aware of it, and I actually became aware of it today. I had read this issue a couple of weeks earlier, so I was planning on doing this issue anyway. Sal Buscema, he is a comic legend. This is during the time where he was changing his art style. And for a successful artist, as mature as Sal was, to do that, it took a lot because he had a successful style, but he realized that it was becoming outdated and he needed to change things up. And Sal did that. He did that beautifully. To me, Sal was always the guy, the prototypical Marvel style in-house guy. When I think of comic books from the 1970s and the way they were drawn, I really do think of Sal Buscema, the same way I would think of Jack Kirby, how he set the style in the 1960s. Other members of the creative team, we see Danny Fingeroth. He's the editor, and we see Jim Shooter is the editor-in-chief. At this point, he was really whipping these guys. Some of them left for DC because they got tired of his antics. Jim Shooter, he brought actually a lot of old DC thinking to Marvel and those offices. And they did not like the discipline that Jim Shooter brought in. So anyway, we're going to go to the story. We see Spider-Man. he looks like he's about to kind of just jump these three guys. These guys are surprised. This is supposed to be their retirement fund, and they realize that they might be spending it um, in Sing Sing prison or something like that. Turn the page. Oh, we're told that the title of this story is Memory Lane. The story's fun. Not a whole lot happens here. Aunt May got very little character building arcs, and they figured this would be a good place to do it. I'm sure there were some fans who were like, "Listen, can you flesh out Aunt May?" Because remember there were comic book fans who were asking for Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen to have their own comics, because when these guys and girls, when they read a Superman comic, they were always thinking, what was the sidekick thinking? How can we tell this from the sidekick's point of view? So yeah, there might have been fans. I remember X-Men 117 had a character building arc, a backstory, I should say, for Charles Xavier, and it was a good story, and it's fine, but you only need to do it for one issue. So I'm sure Jim Shooter says, listen, if you want to get the old bag, her little moment in the sun, we're going to make sure this is the only time it happens. Because God knows we're going to have a hard time getting the kids to buy this issue. And I can't imagine, Jim Shooter couldn't imagine doing it again for Aunt May. So anyway, the criminals, they open fire. And they realize the stakes for them. But at this point, Spider-Man is very quiet, and he just kind of calmly dodges the bullets. However, the bullets are making a lot of noise in the street, and it attracts the attention of a patrol car that's a couple of blocks away. The patrol car heads out to where the shots are fired. Spider-Man, it turns out, is swinging away. So the criminals here are still firing on Spider-Man, even though he's not actually doing anything to them. And I think they're starting to realize, hey, he didn't really notice us. He was looking past us, not at us. However, as the criminals regroup, the patrol car shows up in the area, and presumably they are being arrested and processed for the night. And that's the last we hear of them. So we know that whenever you threaten the property of a one percenter in the Marvel Universe, the police will be there to arrest you. And turn the page. So anyway, we see Spider-Man again. He's very quiet. He's going through these various acrobatic things. Now, what they had set up, I think, at this point, and I was aware of, was that the costume that he had was sentient. It was a sentient being. During the Secret Wars, I think issue number 8, Spider-Man got it in the idea that somehow this was just a super convenient bit of clothing. And it was convenient. It would be nice to be Spider-Man and to sort of have this, this outfit kind of like, come to life and just kind of just set everything up for you. It later turned out to be a sentient creature. It was trying to create this sort of parasitic, symbiotic relationship with Peter. Peter caught it just in time. The Fantastic Four were able to extract that creature before it really started to intertwine with Peter's biology. Kind of the same way the facehugger does in the Alien series. So Peter Parker is actually asleep here, and the creature is keeping Peter sedated while it's sort of independently using Peter's body to sort of stimulate themselves, simulate itself, I should say. So anyway, as Spider-Man is doing this, we see Aunt May. She's on the street. She's in the rain, and I don't know if she actually notices Spider-Man there, because she's sort of like in another world at this point, See Aunt May, she's thinking back to a time when there was the Third Avenue L. And the L is the elevated tracks for the New York subway system. And I think the Third Avenue L was sort of torn down maybe in the 1940s. I'm not really sure. But Aunt May is kind of recalling those days. So she's, in many ways, in much of this story, she's in the past, 50 years in the past. Going to turn the page. So anyway, we see Aunt May here. She the L, the subway L from her memories sort of disappears. So these are enhanced memories. She's actually visually able to sort of create these illusions out of her own head. We see this one building. I think it still exists. It might be near Elizabeth Street in the Bowery. And it definitely looks like a music hall here. And Aunt May, again, is sort of being driven to this place by her memories. I can understand this because I know that when I was in high school, I had wandering syndrome. I don't know if they call it that. I was basically revisiting places from my youth because I was kind of unhappy with what was going on with myself today, and I kept kind of going back to these places that I remember going, in the mid 70s, and this was the mid 80s. In fact, I even specifically remember thinking this. It was around 85. And it was the summer. I was, kind of just going through the Bronx. And I kept thinking to myself how much things sucked in 1985. And I kept thinking that I will never, ever be nostalgic for 1985 again. Now, in some ways, I wish I could go back to 1985 because it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. But, yeah, I specifically remember, like, 85 would be a time that I'd be nostalgic about now, or 84. But back then, I was like, "Fuck this! This sucks." It's kind of like that with the '70s. I mean, I'm very much a '70s kid, but I remember the '70s as being kind of shit, too. So like Quentin Tarantino, he shouldn't be romancing the '70s that much. So, anyways, we see a close up of Aunt May's face. All these wrinkles, all this dried out skin. People who take care of themselves don't really age like this anymore. In fairness to Aunt May, she grew up in a terrible time. There was lots of lead in the air. There were very little environmental protections. She had to deal with polio. She had to deal with dysentery. And she had to deal with typhoid. So that aged a woman. And now she's back to the 1930s. And she's looking at that Danceland Hall, that dance hall, and she's ready. She's looking. She's kind of wanting to do this. She's a young woman in the 1930s, kind of a pretty, very delicate looking woman. I'm trying to think who she would kind of look like. She would be like a petite blonde, very, kind of like a not a spectacular looking woman, but a very cute one, very attractive one. I'm sure she would have been horrified to know what she looked like in these later issues. I'm trying to guess maybe a kind of sort of like a Betty Davis type with kinder eyes. So anyway, the gentleman, he's reaching out for her. Yes, sexual assaults did happen in those days, and the women were mostly blamed for it. So this male hand reaches out to May, and it's this very debonair-looking man. And you figure Aunt May's probably in her late 20s. This guy's probably in his early 30s. But apparently he has some money. He's very well dressed. His name is Johnny Jerome. So this is someone that May knows. And the thing is that he says, "Listen, do you want to go dancing?" And Aunt May is saying, "Listen, I don't have the money for it." So Aunt May is not a gold digger. Um, when she goes on a date with someone, it's Dutch, and she's not one to sort of play games like, "Oh, I left my wallet at home." She's she's not definitely one of these kind of internet gold diggers, or one of these women that will show up with their kids to the date, and then they expect the date to basically pay for everyone. However, Johnny has a wad of cash here, saying, "Listen, you know, when you're with me, you're on my dime." So the guy's like a little he's kind of charming, and he's kind of generous here. He's showing a generous side to himself. He also mentions also Aunt May mentions that she's not really dressed for it because she's kind of just off work, and she's not really dressed up in a way that she would like to be. But Johnny Jerome is saying, "Listen, babe, you'd look great in a potato sack," and he really kind of means it. He's saying, "Listen, you're a doll. Dare I say, you're a queen, and you look that way even in peasants' rags." So Johnny's saying, "Yeah, you're my girl, and I'm proud of you, and we're gonna go dancing." Turn the page. I think if you want to find out more about some of these dance halls, there's a very good movie. I think it's called Queen of the Stardust Ball. But it's a very good TV movie. So anyway, Aunt May, she's having these memories, these flashbacks of the 1930s when this dance hall was really rocking. But the thing is, those mirages, those past images, they start to fade. And suddenly Aunt May is alone in this decrepit, building. And there were a ton of them back in the mid 80s, but they were starting to develop them for, the rich, beautiful people. So Aunt May's there. She breaks into this place, and she's kind of just looking around, lost in her memories, wondering where 1934 went. Go back to Spider-Man. Spider-Man is, it's almost like, morning. So the costume had been using Peter Parker's body the entire night. And this is the one thing, is that the body is parasitic in that it's taking Peter's energies to animate itself. And at this point, Peter was going through some unusual tiredness. So he would just his body would collapse, and his body would be tired for a while, and he couldn't explain it until Reed Richards figured out what was going on with the costume. But that's the reason I think why Peter went to Reed Richards in the first place, because he's saying, "Hey, dude, I'm kind of getting tired, and I don't understand where this is coming from." Turn the page. So we see Peter, the phone rings in his place, so that wakes him up. Otherwise, he'd probably be asleep for a couple more hours. He's very tired. He gets a call from a man named Nathan Lubensky. Nathan Lubensky was Aunt May's love interest at this time. He was a boarder in her home, because apparently Aunt May had started an early what's it called? Airbnb. So she had some boarders. One of them was Nathan. Nathan was an older retired guy. Wasn't quite as decrepit looking as Aunt May. But nevertheless, he was in a wheelchair. He's a little shabbily dressed here. He's not a great dresser. And it might be that Aunt May was the best that he can get. Or maybe he has a thing for, like, dust, because I'm not sure either dust or tumbleweeds was coming out of Aunt May's what. So anyway, Nathan is concerned about Aunt May, and he's thinking that Peter could help, because Aunt May has been acting strangely, with these wandering walks of hers. So then Peter, he swings by as Spider-Man. He goes from where he's living in Manhattan to Queens. So this is when Peter was, he had his own apartment. He had a skylight, which was really nice. Peter, I think, got the apartment just before gentrification started. So he kind of got a good deal. So anyway, we see we see Spider-Man here, but this is the conscious, Peter Parker is conscious here. He's thinking to himself about how, how Aunt May kind of just, raised him, and going through, his origin as Spider-Man. These are all things we know. But Peter does feel a little bit of guilt in that he knows that he disappointed Aunt May when Peter decided to drop out of graduate school. So this point, I think what happened, Peter Parker started out in high school. I think issue number 36 or 38, he had graduated to college. Then he spent like literally the next 200 issues in college. Then eventually he went into grad school. So Peter Parker was always kind of a student. Stan Lee said he always regretted the fact that he took Peter Parker out of high school. I didn't see it that way. It was like when he had a college life, I was fine with that. In fact, I kind of preferred it because then he had more adult problems. It was the young guy dealing with the adult problems that made Spider-Man so appealing to me. So anyway, he's reliving this thing where he kind of disappointed Aunt May. But he's thinking to himself, hey, I had to make myself happy. And God damn it, those student loans, Aunt May never had to deal with those fuckers. I had to fight Doc Ock and the Punisher and Mysterio. But God damn it, those fucking student loan programs were killing me. Turn the page. So he arrives in Forest Hills. He's seeing the old house. It looks the same. Peter's able to quickly change from Spider-Man to civilian clothing because he just has to think about it. With the creature, I guess Peter's kind of fashionably dressed at this time. He knocks on the door. Nathan opens it. And Nathan kind of dumps a guilt trip on Peter, saying, listen, you're the person she loves the most, and you're the person who hurt her the most. Peter's saying, listen, I don't want to listen to that, you old goat. I'll throw you down those stairs, kind of like in that movie Kiss of Death. Nathan is saying, Peter, I love your aunt. I care for her. I worry about her. Those Social Security checks, especially now. So anyway, Peter's saying, listen, just stop with the spiel and just get to the point. And then they open up Aunt May's room, and they see Aunt May. She's kind of passed out, sleeping in a chair here, her Archie Bunker chair. And Nathan is explaining that she's been receiving letters the last few days, and it seems like those letters correspond with Aunt May's strange behavior and her wandering. Gonna turn the page. Nathan's explaining that the mail has been coming for the past week, and she's been like moody and distracted ever since then, and she's been having these strange trips. Peter knows nothing about this. Sometimes Aunt May will call a car service to come back home. Nathan's very concerned about this because there's less money for him to grift from Aunt May. He doesn't want the Uber driver to get the money that he's expecting for his lottery tickets. This guy was addicted to scratch-off lottery tickets during the Todd McFarlane era. Nathan does respect Aunt May's agency, saying, listen, I don't necessarily like, spying on her, but it's the only way I'm going to get an answer out of her because she's not being receptive or communicative when I kind of approach this subject. They see some of the letters that are already opened, and they reach out to them. Peter's reading some of these letters here. He's not actually touching them or picking them up, but he's kind of like, well, they're open. I'm kind of looking down, and I kind of see what's going on. He sees the name Johnny. He's not familiar with Johnny.
Who is Johnny?
Then the two men leave Aunt May. Peter's kind of conflicted. On one hand, he wants to respect Aunt May's agency, but on the other hand, he realizes that Nathan is very concerned about her. And that, it must be serious if he's concerned. You also have to think Aunt May, she's getting on in years. And, she might be getting a little senile or having some frontal temporal issues here. So Peter is bringing up the senile angle. Nathan doesn't believe that Aunt May is becoming senile. Because when he does talk to her, she seems fine in terms of, her facilities. It's just that she goes through these moods, these changes, that's concerning Nathan. So Nathan is thinking, no, it's really those letters that's bothering her and not necessarily something going on in her head. Peter offers to follow her around. Peter, again, he's conflicted because he realizes that he's spying on her. But at the same time, he's also concerned with her. So he's kind of trying to balance those two things. Should be noted that Bill Mantelo at this time was in law school. And he was looking to exit comics by getting into law. I think he was working for the Brooklyn DA until that unfortunate incident where he was involved with a hit and run that caused irreversible brain damage. And that basically just kind of ended so much of his life. So the thing is that he's going to be concerned with issues like this. Also, and this is public record, I believe he was having trouble with his marriage with Karen. And he might have been kind of dwelling on issues like this too. Karen was a couple of years older than Bill, but not by much. Turn the page. So anyway, we see Peter and Nathan. They're sleeping. They're waiting for Aunt May to wake up and go through one of her trips. So they're just kind of like bumming around. However, while they're in deep sleep, Aunt May is heading for the door, and she sees the mailman leaving, and she sees another one of these letters. And the letter is signed by Johnny, and it reads, "Together we rode high above Brooklyn on a circle to the stars." And it's signed Johnny. And we see Aunt May. She's very saddened and depressed, and she feels the urge to wander. And she's probably heading to this location. Johnny's is writing in riddles here, but clearly Aunt May understands what's being asked. She does slam the door as she leaves. She wants to make sure it's locked. Peter hears this, so he's kind of awoken by this. And he sees that Aunt May has already taken off in a taxi. So Aunt May already called the car service to go where she wants. And Peter kind of has to start a little behind. Going to turn the page. So we see Peter, he climbs into a tree, and he climbs out of the tree as Spider-Man, Black Spider-Man. By the way, in terms of Black Spider-Man, the black costume, one of the things Marvel was concerned about were the toys. And they kind of told Kenner, the toy company, they thought maybe they would get yelled at, that, hey, we kind of changed the design of Spider-Man. It turns out they were thrilled. Because they were like, hold it, we'll have 2 versions to sell. That will make us a lot more money. Thank you, Jim Shooter. So that turned out to be kind of an unexpected gift for both Marvel and Kenner, and I guess maybe the kids who like, both models. I was never into models. I remember one Christmas I'd asked my sister, could she buy a couple of Star Wars models. Those are really small ones. I was used to the larger Mego ones. And when I got them, I was like, holy shit, this is lame. And I literally just threw them in the trash. Not in front of her, though. But I remember being profoundly disappointed. So when all those geese get so hyped up for the original Star Wars figures, just know that there was one kid at that time who thought they were just lame and just tossed them in the garbage. My sister did not like me when I was like wasteful with her money. So anyway, the car is driving. They're going along. I guess the Belt Parkway. That's in Brooklyn. And the cab driver, who kind of looks like Archie Bunker, does not understand why everyone's looking at his car, and he's thinking, he might be thinking, hold it, those other car drivers, for lack of a better word. I know there's a better word to describe them. They're looking, probably thinking, hey, Carol Connor, he's a real method actor by being in that car. But it turns out Spider-Man is on top of the car, and he's kind of hitching a ride to wherever Aunt May is going. The taxi driver who's driving her, he doesn't know any better. Aunt May doesn't know any better. It's really just the cars around them who are kind of looking at this site. And they're heading to Coney Island. Coney Island was still a fun place. The first time I went there was in '78. I would go there. My mom would take us there at least once a year, just before school started. That was one of the really nice things she did. And it could be a scary place at times, and it continued to be a scary place into the mid '90s. There was still, street prostitution. There were unfortunately starving stray dogs. There was lots of drug use. This is prior to Coney Island being gentrified. Now the problem with gentrifying Coney Island is that because you have the Atlantic Ocean right there, all the that salt breeze would kind of deteriorate the building structures. But the developers at that time didn't care. They were in pump and dump mode. But nevertheless, in the mid '80s, you could still have fun in Coney Island, legal and otherwise. Can you turn the page? So Aunt May remembers Coney Island from 1934. She's reliving this. Spider-Man is seeing her. It's just kind of standing there. Everyone else is kind of ignoring her. No one else notices Spider-Man. And Peter, as Spider-Man, is thinking, hey, that maybe, Aunt May is becoming senile. However, she glances at a young carrot top man here, and there's something familiar both about the young man and his voice. He calls out to Aunt May, calls her Karen. Karen was, remember, that's Bill's wife's name. He might have been saying, hey, Karen, that old bag who looks like Aunt May. She did not look like Aunt May. She was a very attractive woman, and she was only like 5 or so years older than Bill. Bill might be sending a little message to Karen saying, you old bag for leaving me. So the young man in Aunt May's eyes begins to morph. And he morphs into Ben Parker. And Ben Parker is here. He's working at Coney Island. So Ben Parker in 1934 was smitten with May, while May was dating this other individual who kind of had a danger streak. That was Johnny Jerome. Ben Parker is telling Aunt May, I didn't expect you to be here. You look really nice. And he says, are you with someone? And Aunt May is saying that she's looking for someone. Now, she's not saying she's looking for Mr. Goodbar, meaning, a better contestant than you. She's looking specifically for Johnny Jerome. So at this point, Johnny Jerome really has her heart. Gonna turn the page. So we cut back to Spider-Man. He's looking at mummified Aunt May, and again she's kind of just staring out. People are ignoring her. Remember, this is New York City. Peter, Spider-Man, he did hear Aunt May saying Ben Parker. So even though he doesn't see Ben Parker, she is somehow thinking of him, because he mentioned the name. And he's wondering whether Ben Parker would actually meet Aunt May there. I guess it was explained a little earlier that Peter wasn't all that attentive to Aunt May's past. So a lot of the events that he learns in this story are new to him. And again, Bill covered this. He said, because Peter earlier said, I didn't really know a whole lot about Aunt May and Ben, back when what's his name, Herbert Hoover was president. So anyway, May is back in 1934, I guess, and Ben is warning her that Johnny Jerome is bad news. He's nothing but trouble, and that you're a good girl. May doesn't see this. Remember, she's only seeing the best of Johnny Jerome so far, and what she's seeing is a guy who's well dressed, who has money, who clearly is smitten with her. He love bombs her, but he's not love bombing her in an insincere way. He's not looking to scam. He's not looking for an opportunity. Although we should remember, Aunt May is a very young, attractive woman, so he's a little opportunist toward that. But he's not behaving criminally in front of Aunt May, nor does he view her as a pigeon. He views her as someone he likes. And the two are arguing. Apparently Ben has been a little possessive here. He's kind of grabbing Aunt May. Aunt May is saying, "Get your dirty paws off of me." And she's saying, "Listen, Johnny Jerome, he's found a way of taking this depression and making it work for him. You're not doing that. You're just a carny." At this point, we know what carnies are. And really, I don't need you stalking me and making judgments or decisions for me. So at this point, she's leaning more toward Johnny. She clearly has kind of a good relationship with Ben, but at the same time, she's like saying, "Ben, you're kind of overstepping your bounds at this point." So Aunt May, she heads to the carousel, and she rides on one of the horses. She's listening to the music there, the disco beat. I remember some of the rides. They had the music was a little outdated. They really didn't want to spend money. We see the horse. The horse that she's currently on is a little worse for the wear. However, in Aunt May's eyes, it transforms into something brand new, freshly painted. And Aunt May is back in 1934, and someone's calling out, "Hey, babe." And turn the page. Aunt May has this, "Yeah, I know I'm a babe." So anyway, we see Johnny Jerome here, and once again, he's waiting for Aunt May. He's being very flamboyant. In kind of a flashy way. He had jumped onto the carousel here. He's kind of like kind of maneuvering his way into Aunt May. He's kind of giving off that Indiana Jones vibe. He even has the hat that Indiana Jones would wear, and he's kind of riding the same horse that Aunt May is on, although he's not in the saddle here. He's on the side. And again, this very natural kind of talking, this banter, this romantic banter between the two.
This is great banter. It really is.
Johnny is mentioning, "I saw you talking to that Ben Parker guy." Aunt May's kind of putting him down. "Oh yeah, he's just jealous of you, Johnny. He says you'll get me into trouble," and it's kind of like that type of trouble back then. Aunt May, in her like late age, 1984, she's not noticing the fact that the carousel is spinning faster and faster, and the carousel is spinning faster and faster. And Spider-Man's noticing this, and he's saying, "This is trouble." And he's noticing the operator. And the operator is not doing this on purpose. He's trying to stop this the carousel from picking up speed. So so Spider-Man notices, hold it, this is an accident happening. I need to do something here. There is a great movie called Strangers on a Train. Strangers on a Train. It's by Alfred Hitchcock, and the climax of the film takes place on a carousel that's out of control, and it's spinning and spinning and spinning. And as lame as that premise sounds, Alfred Hitchcock is a master of making that an incredibly exciting sequence. So, and Bill, I remember Bill kind of liked old movies. He was a fan of old movies, so he definitely saw Strangers on a Train. Aunt May, she's out of 1930 now because she realizes how dangerous 1984 was. And yeah, New York in 1984 was dangerous, and it only got worse. So we see Spider-Man. He grabs onto the carousel, and he's using his feet like Fred Flintstone to stop the ride. And turn the page. Now at this point, Spider-Man is able to stop the carousel from himself, and he's concerned about his feet because he remembered those Flintstone cartoons, and he said, "I don't remember Fred complaining about this." But holy crap, this fucking hurts my feet. But nevertheless, the carousel has been stopped. Aunt May and the other riders are safe. The other riders are thanking Spider-Man, saying, hey, we read the Bugle and they say you're a menace, but you're kind of a cool guy here and we really like you. Spider-Man is not used to this type of praise from the public, but at the same time, Aunt May is able to sort of get away. And she's not doing so intentionally, like, eek, that gross Spider-Man. She's going back to 1934 at this point. But by the time Spider-Man is able to break away from his newly minted fans, Aunt May's gone. Aunt May knows where she's going. Spider-Man and Peter doesn't. So Spider-Man's looking around. He just sees a crowded park, but he doesn't see Aunt May. So he's kind of begrudging the fact that he didn't use a Spidey tracer, because there's going to be a lot of fans who are going to write in, so why didn't you use a Spidey tracer? And they're going to explain here that hey, he thought of it. But, thing is, when you toss a Spidey tracer, you're either doing it on a criminal or you're doing someone who's really in danger of being apprehended by a supervillain. He doesn't want to think of Aunt May that way. He wants to think of Aunt May as maybe she's just, kind of a crazy old bat. So he didn't want to put the spider tracer on her. He can't find her. He's looking around. It turns out Aunt May is on the Ferris wheel. The Ferris wheel that you would see at the beginning of the Warriors. The big wheel. By the way, that ride is actually a lot more fun because some of the carriages actually move, and you got the feeling that it's actually going to break off the wheel. It's the same thing with the Cyclone. The thing that's really scary about the Cyclone is the Cyclone looks like it's going to break apart in any moment. And Aunt May is looking at the skyline of New York, and he's remembering when she and Johnny were on this same ride, 50 years earlier, when the skyline was much different. You didn't have the Twin Towers here, and you didn't have the Baxter Building here. And Aunt May's saying that, this 1930 skyline was really beautiful. Gonna turn the page. Now, I have to say that if you are listening up to this part, you might as well stay invested, because even though this is kind of an interesting story, not a whole lot goes on. So if you're noticing the lack of action, it really doesn't get that much better. There's a little action at the end. But again, this is sort of to build character to Aunt May, kind of flesh her out. So it looks like this guy Johnny, he's kind of a sweet talker. He's a guy who has visions of grandeur. So he's saying, "Listen, baby, I'm gonna own a piece of this, and you're gonna be my queen." Now the thing is, Aunt May or Aunt or May, I should say, she's not really thinking of Johnny as a criminal. So when Johnny is saying this stuff, he's saying, "Listen, I want you to be my Carmela to my Tony." That's the way he's thinking of it. He's thinking of it in a way that, hey, I'm going to be head of one of these 5 families here, and I want you to be married to me. And Johnny has a gift for Aunt May. It's a necklace, and it's one that says, "To other people." Again, he's viewing Aunt May as kind of a reflection of his success. So if he views himself as a modest, successful, up-and-coming guy, Aunt May is going to be that guy. Now, obviously, as he moves up the ladder, he's going to think to himself, hey, I kind of deserve movie stars and stuff like that. But at this point in Johnny's criminal career, he views Aunt May as an acceptable, avatar, a female avatar of his success. He wants people to look at her with pride, saying, the guy who is dating that chick, he must be something else. So he has this very expensive, shiny necklace here. And Johnny is saying to May, that dame, she's the queen of New York. And Aunt May is very impressed. By the way, if a guy is calling a woman a queen, he's probably a Nigerian scammer. But back then, I guess it was different. Aunt May doesn't want it to. She doesn't really want to accept it. I think she doesn't want to fully commit to Johnny. Also, she's someone who's very modest. She's like, you paid a lot of money for that. I kind of feel uncomfortable with the fact that you spent so much money on this. When there are like necessities to pay for. Johnny's explaining, listen, I'm on this good winning streak. I'm a guy who's moving up. Oh, take a look down there. Ben Parker's there. He's kind of, he's kind of stalking you, kind of watching you from afar. Kind of a creepy guy. You don't want to be stuck with a loser like that, So Johnny is offering the pendant, kind of this Jane Seymour type heart pendant. He's saying, listen, take it. Aunt May, she's kind of like, she's tempted. She's tempted. This is sort of like, Dr. Spectrum's power prism. It's kind of like drawing on her. And Aunt May is about to accept this because, again, she's a young, beautiful, but poor girl. And this is a luxury item. And this is something that she's never been gifted before. She's not expecting anything like this from Ben Parker. So this is kind of like a once-in-a-lifetime moment for her. And she's reaching. She's a little nervous, though, because she realizes who she's dealing with subconsciously.
He's a good man. He's a good father.
You tell me he's a depressed criminal, prone to anger, serially unfaithful. Is that your definition of a good man?
Even though Johnny has been nothing but good in front of Aunt May knows that there's something behind him. Carmela understood that about Tony. However, before Aunt May could reach for the pendant, the wheel suddenly lurches into motion. Again, we're talking about 1934 technology here. Going to turn the page. The scan that I'm working from doesn't have any ads, so I can't really talk about that. I don't even think it has the Marvel bullpen bulletin to it. And so yeah, that's on the scanner. So anyway, the wheel is lurching forward. This distracts Johnny. Johnny can't complete handing the pendant over to Aunt May. Aunt May uses this interruption as a way of breaking the tension, saying, Johnny, let's talk about it a little bit more. So the thing is, Aunt May have been making a rash decision a few moments earlier, but the incident with the wheel caused Aunt May to rethink the situation and she says, "Listen, we'll just hold it off." Again, this is very cautious thinking on Aunt May's part. Aunt May, you know, she's gonna do the right thing. She was raised the right way. You know, she's gonna kind of look and be thorough and not let emotion overtake her. There's gonna be no unwanted pregnancies in Aunt May's life. Johnny's saying, "Hey, that's okay. That's cool. You know, we have a lot of time, and I'm gonna be having a lot of money because I'm kind of planning some crimes." And Johnny's very accepting of that. But Aunt May doesn't know whether you know, Johnny will get a return on this, because Johnny's saying, "Listen, the more you wait, the more you'll realize how great I am." And Aunt May's saying, "Will I? Will I really see this?" And we see Ben Parker, you know, sad sack Ben, being cucked here. You know, the girl he wanted, but, you know, it's really not his girl, but he's still going to stalk her. And then we see Aunt May. She returns back to 1984. She's still thinking about that decision. Because now it's indicated that maybe she kind of regretted being with Ben Parker. So anyway, we go back to Forest Hills. Aunt May has not returned home, but Peter has. And Nathan is calling Peter a dumbass, saying, how the hell did an 80-year-old woman outrun you? I mean, seriously, dude. Peter's not listening to this. He's saying, "Listen, hey, Hot Wheels, why don't you go out there and chase after Aunt May? Yeah, you see, you're not volunteering, are you?" So he's saying, "Listen, you know, I'm not." He throws some suspicion that maybe he's Spider-Man, saying, "Listen, I'm not a professional in this." So Aunt May returns, but she's kind of lost in her thoughts. So she completely ignores him. She goes up to her room. Nathan is saying, "Listen, I've seen this before. These old bats, you know, they act exactly like this."
Give the subject a piece of paper. Ask him to draw a circle, fold the paper in half, and give it back. These demented old bats can't do that.
This Aunt May's getting senile here. I'll need power of attorney at some point. Hey, I'll need, you know, take control of her finances. You know, those scratch-off lottery tickets, they're not getting any cheaper, Peter. And my luck's not getting any better. Peter's trying to ignore Nathan here. But Peter's still saying, no, it's not senility. It's these letters, because she sees moments where Aunt May is fine, and it's only when Aunt May kind of goes into thinking about these letters and what's going on that's kind of bothering her. So then Peter heads up to the attic. He admits there's a lot of dust. No one has spent much time here, including himself. He does see a few things. He sees a snapshot of when he was in high school. He's taking a picture with Liz Allen and Flash Thompson. For most of high school, those two were bullying him. So Peter somehow has this treasured memory of this photographer, of this photograph with his high school bullies. He sees a picture of his mom kind of looking kind of like Betty Brant did when she got married to Ned Leeds. And then she sees a picture of Aunt May and Ben Parker. There is a noticeable age difference, even though neither one of Ben and Aunt, they have no gray hair, but never. You can tell that this is like a couple that looks like they're in their 50s, whereas Peter's parents, they look like they're in their 20s. So I don't know what was going on with Aunt May's mom's vagina, because damn, she must have been really old when she popped out that second kid. But so far, none of the artifacts or memorabilia or items, they're triggering anything about Johnny. So he's not learning anything about Johnny. But he sees a chest here. and he wants to take a look into it. Peter's remembering that when he was a kid, he would look through this stuff and he didn't really care about it, but he cares about it now. We see that Aunt May, she's kind of based on the girl in A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. So clearly, again, Bill, who was a movie buff, definitely saw A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. It's an excellent film. So it's not surprising that he took inspiration from that. And we see the Riley family. So before Aunt May married Ben Parker, she was May Riley. It looks like 1926. They're kind of obscuring these dates here because they realize they're off a little, and they don't want these comic book fans to write to them, saying, "Well, can you clarify this?" Peter, he finds a Valentine's Day's card, and he opens it up. He's thinking that his uncle wrote this and gave it to Aunt May. Can turn the page. But it turns out it's from Johnny. So even though Aunt May was a married woman, she still kept a piece of memorabilia about Johnny. So even though she was mostly married, she was married to Ben, that's the guy she loved, there was still a little bit of Johnny in her head, thinking, what if I had picked Johnny? And she valued this photo. She valued Johnny at the time. Peter's becoming more convinced that it's her feelings toward Johnny Jerome and not senility that's causing these issues with Aunt May. Peter, he heads out to get some answers, and he goes to the Daily Bugle. Apparently, the Daily Bugle had a computer system well beyond what everyone else had. So basically, Peter Parker is asking this technician computer technician to kind of use the Daily Bugle's AI to kind of search for who is Johnny Jerome. And we see that there is a file that does come back. Johnny Jerome was a career criminal. He ran numbers. He was a bootlegger, which meant he sold illegal alcohol, kind of like Al Capone. He was a gambler, burglar, and he also murdered. And he was convicted of felony murder. It looks like sometime in 1935. So soon after these events, Johnny Jerome, he spent a lot of times behind bars. And he was recently paroled. The technician is looking at his rap sheet saying, this Johnny Jerome guy, he seems kind of dangerous here. He's kind of like Fish Lamana when he got out of jail. And Peter's saying, hey, thank you, Bert. Thanks a lot. You got me some good information. But I'm a big boy and I can take care of myself. I'm going to turn the page. So Peter heads back to Forest Hills. He has a bit more background on what's going on. I think maybe he might want to confront Aunt May, and he can tell whether she's lying or being delusional, because Peter has some kind of scary facts about this guy. Nathan, he sees another letter. He decides to open it. He says, well, Aunt May wasn't here. You weren't here. So I figured, hey, I might as well open it. Hey, I'm going to be power of attorney here. And, I have to practice opening up these letters in case, so I can get my scratch-off checks for those few times that I win. We see the letter. It reads, Dearest May, I've got to see you one last time. If you still love me, meet me under the arch. Signed, Johnny. Sounds a little cryptic. Peter at first realizes, hold it, how am I going to figure this out? Then he deducts that the arch was something that he saw in a photo. So the thing is, the picture with Johnny Jerome, there was an arch in the background, and Peter is thinking that he's seen that arch before, and he realizes that that was Aunt May's childhood home. So I don't think Johnny got any action from May, but he came close. May was kind of bringing him to the door, kind of maybe she wanted to knock, check if the parents were asleep, and then Johnny and her can go up to their room and have this quiet little moment for themselves. Johnny's thinking this is great. Maury isn't around to tell me I'm the kid if something bad happens, but it didn't look like it went past that. Nathan's asking where Peter's going. He gives out the address, so he knows the specific address of Aunt May's childhood home. He's Spider-Man at this point. He's kind of swinging toward it. Peter is kind of familiar with the city. He's going into Brooklyn, kind of not necessarily a neighborhood he's used to going. He's mostly a Manhattan guy, but he's in Brooklyn, and he notices it's very slummy, which it was. Turn the page. I mean, just 10 years earlier, Park Slope, which is one of the more exclusive areas of Brooklyn, there's like Brooklyn Heights and then there's Park Slope. 10 years earlier, Park Slope was a slum. If you want to see what Park Slope looked like in the 1970s, watch the movie The Landlord, which is an excellent movie. So anyway, Spider-Man lands on this rundown, decrepit building. He's at the building itself, and it's clearly in disrepair. And Spider-Man is actually surprised that the building is still there. So he's just waiting for Aunt May, and he's kind of just looking around for the arch. He notices it, but things had changed quite a bit. He's saying, this, you didn't have like happy smiling couples in this arch. This is now basically a crack house. At this point, we see some derelicts. We called them bums back in this day, things are terrible here at this point. And the taxi pulls up in front of the building. Aunt May comes out. The driver doesn't understand. Are you sure you want to get off here? And he says, yes, I am. Gonna turn the page. So anyway, obviously Aunt May is a target. She's old. She has a purse, and she looks like she's easy to roll. Now it should be noticed that the criminal element here are middle-aged white men, and that was kind of true in the 1920s. The face of crime were middle-aged white men who were doing drive-bys in the 1920s. It wasn't young black teenagers. It was middle-aged white men on shows on The Untouchables. So Peter is taking this as positive evidence that Aunt May isn't senile. Aunt May is aware of what's going on, and that she's just simply following what the letter is telling her. So Aunt May didn't show up here under some delusional break in her thought process. Aunt May showed up because she got that letter saying, "Hey, meet me at the arch." So Peter, on one hand, Peter is seeing this as a positive thing, but on the same time, at the same time, Aunt May is in this dangerous place here, and Aunt May, she's talking, she's thinking out loud, saying, "Yes, it is quite dreadful, but it was beautiful once." And that's what she sees, and she's heading into the building. She doesn't have any occupational rights, so she's kind of breaking and entering here. But she's breaking and entering into a crack house. And Spider-Man, he realizes Peter, he needs to watch over Aunt May, because he knows, he's seeing that the criminal element is following her inside. And again, Aunt May, she's going back to the 1930s as she's, walking up this staircase that she probably went up and down dozens of times in her lifetime. She sees her mom. Her mom is kind of youngish looking, but she has silver hair. And I'm wondering, did this mom pop out another kid 20 years later? I don't think so. That was the one thing. And obviously it was an issue because Steve Ditko, when he thought of older aunts, he was thinking decrepit old dust bags. Like Aunt May, and it never occurred to him, you can actually have younger women doing that. And Spider-Man, the continuity of Spider-Man has been kind of trapped by that. This George Washington look-alike, being the aunt of this young man. We see the dad. Dad is, again, he has gray hair, but he's quite virile here. And clearly the dad likes Ben Parker. In fact, someone had mentioned to the dad that, May went to Coney Island, and she probably saw Ben Parker there, who's working there as a carny. And the dad saying, I really like that Ben Parker guy. But Aunt May's playing it coy, saying, oh yeah, I kind of saw him, but it wasn't like under a romantic circumstances. But she's also saying, listen, I was with Johnny Jerome. He was my man. And Aunt May's back in the 1984. Turn the page. Aunt May's kind of looking at her old bedroom here. It's completely, decimated here. Time has not been kind to Aunt May, nor has it been kind to her childhood room here. Spider-Man, he comes in, he realizes he needs to, he sees what a dump this place is. And he's saying, listen, this place must have been spotless when Aunt May was living here. She wouldn't accept, she wouldn't accept living conditions like this. Spider-Man, again, he doesn't know where Aunt May is precisely, but he wants to make sure that she's okay. He's going to search the building for her. Then he notices these 4 thugs who are clearly have bad intentions toward this kindly old lady. Spider-Man's making sure that, hey, these guys are going to pay for what they're thinking about with my aunt. And, Aunt May is not a gelf, at least not by my definition, but, hey, there might be guys out there. Doc Ock liked it. So Aunt May's back. She's back in 84 at this point. And she does see something that looks brand new. And she's wondering, hey, I'm in this place, this crack house. Maybe someone left a spoon. Someone's going to give their crackhead girlfriend a brand new spoon, saying, baby, you're hotter than this spoon in a crack house. And she opens it up, and then she sees the pendant that she almost accepted in 1934. And Aunt May is back in 1934. Gonna turn the page. I think the actress she kind of looks like was, there was an actress in the 70s. She was a very successful supporting actress. She sort of had a squeaky voice. I think her name was Georgette. And I think this might be based on her. I forgot her name. She's one of those, oh yeah, I saw her in this. Then she sees Johnny Jerome, but she sees the version of Johnny Jerome from 1934. Johnny's coming through the fire escape, kind of like Tony and Marie in West Side Story, or like Romeo and Juliet. Johnny lays a kiss on her, and he's saying, no time for small talk, sweetheart. We gotta work fast now. And Johnny's being kind of suave and debonair. May's saying, but Johnny, I already told you I can't accept this thing. And Johnny says, sure you can, babe. If you're Mrs. Johnny Jerome. So do you want to be, Maid Jerome? And then Johnny is converting into what he is now. So May no longer sees Johnny, who actually was there in his 1934 glory. She sees a much older man in 1984. So the young, dashing Johnny Jerome has been replaced by this hardened criminal who has spent, like 50 years behind bars. And he's kind of beaten down, he's worn down, but he still looks at May with those 1934 eyes. And yeah, there are cases. I remember, I know if I met my first girlfriend and she's 80 years old, I am going to see a 23-year-old. So I kind of understand where May is coming psychologically. However, the crackheads here, they're not thinking about that. They're thinking about that purse. And Spider-Man knows this, and he immediately goes into action. He gives this guy a concussion. And the other three guys, they're looking at this, and they're like, we don't really want to deal with this. Hey, we can get spare change other ways. So they run out. So this one guy got conked, but, he took it for the team because the team ran away. Gonna turn the page. However, Spider-Man, he's not going to let him off the hook. They had thoughts of crimes, but they didn't actually commit one. But nevertheless, Spider-Man, he's determined to break some bones. One of the tough guys, he pulls out a gun. He has no chance against Spider-Man and his web. He's being called a sleazeball here. And he's like, I'm not a sleazeball, I'm a human.
I am not an animal!
And Spider-Man slugs him, saying, pleasant dreams, creep. And the two oldsters, they hear the commotion downstairs, but they don't know what it is. Turn the page. But then we're back to 1934. There's kind of this flashback here. And what it turns out is that Johnny Jerome had committed a crime. It was a crime that paid off well, but it was a crime that had unintended consequences. And basically that someone was killed, someone was murked during the commission of this crime. Johnny knows this is dangerous. And they hear a gunshot outside. Johnny is saying, it's the cops. They must have caught up with my bagmen. Bagmen were criminals, but they were low-level criminals. They were the guys who held the money and made the payoffs. And they got that name because when the Italian gangsters in New York, they were rising. But the thing is, the political establishment was Irish. And those old Irish guys did not like those Italian guys. So the Italian mobsters like Lucky Luciano and Vito Genovese, they had to get an Irish guy who would make the payoffs for them. In fact, one of the gangsters actually changed his name to Costello, which is an Irish name. So he would be more accepted by these grumpy old Irishmen. Meanwhile, their sons were kind of like dating Italian girls and stuff. It was kind of crazy. So that's where Bagman came from. And if someone called you a bagman, you were kind of a low-level criminal. So he's saying his low-level guys kind of took care of him. It turns out that Johnny wants to run off. He wants to be a fugitive from the law, but he wants to take May with him so they can be like Bonnie and Clyde. I think May might look a little like Faye Dunaway in Bonnie and Clyde. Faye Dunaway looked really beautiful in that film. So anyway, of course, good girl May, she doesn't want to do it. She senses Johnny's in trouble. She feels that Johnny should turn himself in. But then they're interrupted by a voice who says, "Oh, nothing much, May. He and a few of his friends just held up a jewelry store and shot the poor old man who tried to call for help." So this is Ben Parker. Ben Parker, he snitches Johnny out in front of May. He's also stalking May. So on one hand, he's sort of it looks like he's the hero, but he's kind of like he's kind of like being a bit of a creepster. And Ben is explaining that Johnny probably grabbed that that wedding ring. He stole it. Do you really want to wear stolen merchandise on you? Johnny's like surprised. Parker, Parker, you're a carny. I can't trust a carny. You're gonna stitch me out. May is asking Johnny, is Ben telling the truth? She doesn't believe Ben. On the face, she's trying for some confirmation from Johnny here. Johnny is threatening to kill Ben. That's when Aunt May realizes, hold it, this guy's kind of a criminal, and she doesn't want the stuff. Aunt May's horrified that she's been given stolen merchandise, and did you ever think I could marry a criminal? I'm a good girl. And Johnny says, times are hard, babe. A man's got to take what he wants if he's going to have anything. Sadly, that's kind of happening today. This is why there's so many scams going on. People feel like they can't get ahead unless they're scamming. So anyway, Johnny, he takes back the pendant. He grabs the pendant back. He's saying, listen, I'm going to be a fugitive. I'm going to be on the run. I'm going to need some money. What you're holding was money, and it can be money again. I'll just have to take a little bit of a loss on the true value. So Johnny leaves the apartment. He goes out the fire escape, and he is armed. I'm going to turn the page. Then Aunt May and Ben, they're watching from their window. They hear gunfire. Johnny is having a shootout with the police. It looks like Johnny got shot in the leg, and it doesn't look like any of the police officers were murked. He would have been given the electric chair if he did that. But nevertheless, clearly, Johnny has been captured. He's been exposed as a criminal. This is heartbreaking for Aunt May. Uncle Ben takes advantage of the situation. He's that shoulder to cry on. Soon you'll be bouncing on my knee. So then we're back to 1984. Aunt May has run through all those memories now at this point. However, they're replaying the events that happened in 1934, in 1984, because it looks like Johnny is also retreated into the past. He thinks the police are after him. So he's sort of reliving, these moments from 1934. It looks like Johnny is the one who's senile, because he's sort of intertwining 1934 with 1984, and he's sort of reliving these events. I guess he was kind of hoping that he'll have a version of reality where he and Aunt May escape. Aunt May was not going for that. She's saying, listen, my Social Security checks, I have to worry about my Medicaid, my Medicare. I'm not going to be a fugitive, from this phantom police that you're conjuring up in your head. Aunt May is saying, listen, these are fantasies. You have to accept that, for 50 years you were in the can. You were there with Phil when he was, eating grilled cheese off the radiator.
You want compromise? How's this? 20 years in the can. I wanted manicotti. I compromised. I ate grilled cheese off the radiator instead.
You were with Billy Batts when, he was doing things to kids like, Tommy DeSimone.
Drinks around the house.
Go on, Fred, go on. It's on the house. I fuck kids like that in the can. In the ass, I fuck them.
And you have to face it that, hey, you spent 50 years with those guys. And if you want any type of life, you got to start dealing with reality now. Johnny's a little worse for wear, but you figure, hey, there are working girls who, he could spend a little time with. I remember being as young as 13 and having street prostitutes come up to me. Now, a couple of them were kind of jerking around this young white boy, but there were a few that were kind of serious, and that's when I learned that there are adult women who will knowingly have sex with underage boys. So that was New York in 1984 and sooner, in fact. Johnny's he's kind of bemoaning the fact that his best years are behind him, and Aunt May saying, "Yeah, your life kind of sucked." It's not like Aunt May had a great life either. And turn the page. This is the only novel anyone will write about Aunt May's life. And Aunt May's talking sense to Johnny, and they both leave the crack house. And Aunt May saying, "Listen, we got to be careful because there's real criminals in here." However, Spider-Man took care of them. And Spider-Man's liking what he's hearing because he realizes that Aunt May is not senile, and she was just going through some things that Johnny was going through. Johnny might be a little senile. Aunt May saying, "Listen, I know a place that can help you, that you can stay and you can kind of rebuild the rest of your life." Aunt May, she returns. She doesn't return with Johnny. She's back home. Nathan's saying, "Hey, baby, what's up?" And Aunt May is saying, "Listen, I've been acting a little strange, but I have a few things to tell you. And I'm going to tell you right now." And that's the end of the story. Spider-Man is looking on with approval as he's peeping in the windows. So again, this is a good story. There's not a whole lot that goes on. It builds some character into the Aunt May continuum, but it's like X-Men number 117. You only need that one Charles Xavier story. Although I think Chris Claremont kind of tried to shake things up. I think at one point he wanted Charles Xavier to be kidnapped by the Morlocks and for him to be dressed in nylons. Jim Shooter was like, "Oh fuck no, we're not doing that. You don't bring that Hellfire Sex Club stuff into these Marvel comics." And so that's it for that story. There is a B story here involving the cat, the black cat. And the creative team is one I'm really not too familiar with, except for the editors. Danny Fingerroth, Al Milgram, I'm aware of him, Jim Shooter. But in terms of the story, Bob Denatale and the art by Ron Randall, I'm not really familiar with them. It's fine. It's okay. It looks a lot like... what's his name? Frank Springer, I think, from the 60s. It's very sharp. The drawings are very sharp, although the poses may not be all that natural. They're kind of like stilted. So anyway, it turns out that Spider-Man wants to stay home tonight. He brought some groceries. He said, "Well, that Trader Joe's place is really great, but I really had to go far away to get it." Felicity, the black cat, they're both dressed in their costumes. She's hanging around the sofa. She's ready to put in a VHS tape. However, she's kind of the type that wants to go out every night and fight crime. Spider-Man saying, "Listen, I enjoy giving a criminal a good concussion every night, but sometimes we got to take a break from that. We got to be considerate of the health professionals who have to treat all these criminals with concussions." And Spider-Man brought some stuff. He also brought a present for the black cat. Black cat loves presents. She has some little fake modesty that, "Oh no, you shouldn't have." Can turn the page. And it's wine, but it's in it's in one of these holders, a Carfer. I don't know what the hell they call it. It looks like an I Dream Genie bottle. So anyway, Felicity is really impressed with this. When she joined up with Peter, she didn't realize she'd be slumming like this. She was expecting the lap of luxury. She was expecting a Bruce Wayne type of lifestyle. She was a little confused about branding, saying, hey, Spider-Man, you got the best branding in the comic universe. Why are you so dirt poor? But nevertheless, she stuck it out with Spider-Man. She had a thing for the costume, not the guy. She didn't really like Peter that much, even though Peter's kind of a good-looking guy. But Felicity Hardy, she's more about the imagery than anything else. And so they're preparing for what they want to watch on TV. And again, like I said, Bill watched a lot of TV. Well, Bill Manilow didn't draw this. But anyway, people watched a lot of TV back then. Felicity said, listen, I'll cook some victuals here. We'll have something to eat. We'll watch some TV. And we'll call it a night. She goes into the kitchen and she sees that the gift that Peter had... I'm going to turn the page. The gift that Peter had left her is gone. And the thing is, she's very concerned about this because she kind of has a reputation of being a little flaky. She definitely has attention deficit disorder. She's not the most careful person in the world. Sometimes she tends to be a little self-centered, and she's constantly losing stuff. And she doesn't want to go into the living room and tell Peter, hey, I lost that wine we were about to drink. And Peter's like, how the fuck did you lose that? You walked into the kitchen, which is like 3 steps away, and you lost it? I mean, are you serious? Are you that much of a flake? Now, Felicity, Black Cat, she doesn't want to deal with that. So she's coming up with an excuse that Spider-Man needs to go out and get some wine, because apparently the gift did not have wine in it. And Felicity was saying, I'll get some wine from the cabinet. She said she's kind of lying to Peter here, saying, hey, I checked the cabinet, I have no wine. You'll have to go out and get some wine. Since Peter's still in his Spider-Man outfit, he's saying that's not a big deal. I'll just go out and swing out for some. But the thing, Felicity is saying, no. You said we're going to have a normal night. That means you can't, swing around the city. If I can't do it, you can't do it. And Peter says, okay, fair enough. I'll just go as Peter Parker, and I'll get the wine. Peter wants to make sure that he has his ID, and he's going to present the one that has McLovin on it, and he'll be fine. Felicity is going to take advantage of this situation by looking for that gift. So this is the big thing. She goes out and she looks for she looks very beautiful with this platinum blonde hair. I can see why Peter likes her. I can see why Felicity doesn't necessarily like Peter, because she kind of sees Peter as being below her standards. Peter hasn't found a good place to transform into his civilian clothing, so he's on top of the ceiling, the whole ceiling, and he has some of the tenants to navigate, and he figures once some of these tenants go back to their apartments, he can kind of just quickly change into civilian clothing. Gonna turn the page. So anyway, we get back to Felicity. She's very concerned about this. She does find a clue. Apparently, where her gift should be, there's actually this matchbook, and it's a matchbook to a particular restaurant. Now, what's interesting in terms of the drawing is that there's a mouse drawn on the matchbook. And it's not a mouse as in squeak squeak. It's M-A-U-S, mouse, as in Art Spiegelman's graphic novel. I think Art Spiegelman was publishing his like legendary mouse stories. That was based on his father's experience in World War II, because he was Spiegelman Jewish, and his father was Polish Jew, and then the Nazis invaded Poland, and he told about that horrifying story how he was trying to avoid the concentration camps, and then he ends up with one, and he still stayed together with his wife. I highly recommend reading that series. So Felicity's thinking, hey, this is a clue. I can head out to this restaurant and see what's going on. She's beautifully drawn, although her face is a bit downcast here. She's still in her black cat outfit, so she can just jump out of the window here. That was also another problem for Peter, is that she wasn't very careful. She was treating the Peter's bedroom window like it was the Batcave from Batman '66, and things Peter had to constantly remind her, hey, we have neighbors. So anyway, Felicity, she ends up at the restaurant, and she's trying to figure out what type of clue she sees. What she sees in the restaurant is an older couple being served with the gift that Peter had given her. And she's saying, bingo, I found what he had given me. I can go back to the rest. I can go back to, I'll steal it from here. Because the person who took this, they stole it from me. That's what Felicity's thinking. I'll steal it back. Then when Peter sees it there, he won't think I'm a weirdo or a flake. Gonna turn the page, and then he can start trusting me. So anyway, Felicity actually enters the restaurant. It seems a little strange that she's in a mask and kind of this yoga suit, and she has those what are those called? Those the type of the hairy footwear. I forgot the name of the brand, but you'd know them, like something with a Z. So anyway, Felicity's there. She's talking to this older couple about the wine container. The older couple is very confused. Remember, Black Cat's branding wasn't as good as it is now than back then. The old geezer, he doesn't know what it is, but he sees this hot chick in kind of this yoga outfit. And she's about to take the bottle, but then there's kind of this old guy in a trench coat, and he's talking about the microfilm, and there's no business, and he's referring to the cat as the cat, the black cat. Black Cat is happy about this. She's saying, at least someone is noticing my branding here. She's worried that she's going to end up in a coon convention situation that Cartman went through. She's saying, "Oh God, at least someone has recognized me." But the old guy, he has a gun drawn on her. He grabs the I Dream of Jeannie bottle, and he's saying, "Listen, don't follow me, and I'll take a couple of these. I'll take these two old geezers as hostages." And turn the page. Now, what happened here is that the scan is missing the following page. So I'm going from page 5 to page 7. And I have no idea what happened. I probably will never learn what happened. But nevertheless, it looks like the old geezers are in front of their apartment building. So they were taken and then they were returned back. They're talking about this microfiche. It's saying it's national security. The wife is saying this is much too dangerous. The husband's saying, look, lovey, we have to do it. And, she's saying, now listen, Thurston. And then a police officer, he kind of notices this quarrel. He's kind of saying, hey, guys, what's going on? The older man says, I need your help. Then we see above them, the black cat has landed on a rooftop, and it has the individual that had held the gun on him. However, the individual appears to be much softer than we initially saw them. And the individual here is saying, listen, I don't have the I Dream of Jeannie bottle. I passed it to some friends, the old geezers. Then we see Black Cat. She's looking at the events that are going downstairs with the old geezers and the cop. The cop says, I don't know about this spy, but the girl you described sounds like the Black Cat. And Felicity's going, yes! Yes, my branding is working. People actually know who I am. And the police officer is saying, listen, we have a captain DeWolf. And she's really popular. The guys like her at the station. She has some superhero connections. Spider-Man likes her. I think the Black Cat likes her. Though she's a little catty toward her because, DeWolf's kind of a pretty chick. She has contacts with Daredevil. And the cop's saying, Daredevil never seems to comment on her looks. I wonder why. Maybe he's, So anyway, we're going to turn the page. And now Black Cat, you figure, has spent a lot of time downstairs. And you must be thinking, how long does it take for Peter to get some wine? And we see here that Peter is gotten so frustrated that what happened is that Peter is buying the wine, but the thing is he got cornered by some kids. So I guess at some point he decided to break his word to the Black Cat and that he was going to swing home after getting the wine because he's clearly holding a bag. But there were some neighborhood kids who saw him. They're saying, hey, how you doing? Can you show us some stuff? I remember an incident that was close to this. And I was working in a bookstore. It was retail, and it was it was like the early 90s, like 93, 94. And Will Smith came into the store. And he came in with Jada Pinkett. And this is before they got married. I think they got married literally less than a year later. So the two of them are coming into the bookstore. They are so calm. They are so polite. There is zero drama with them. But the thing is, they had picked up their books. And as they were coming to the register, and I remember because I was ringing them up, I forgot what they bought. There were some kids, some like 12-year-old kids, just like this. And they recognized Will Smith. And they surrounded him, and they were talking like they were like long lost friends. Will's just smiling, he's not really saying anything, but he's validating these kids feeling that Will is their friend. And the kids were talking about, hey Will, are you gonna come to the playground tomorrow and shoot some hoops with us? And Will was kind of like, hey, I'll see what I can do. But those kids took it as a hardcore yes. I don't know how many hours they spent waiting for Will to show up. I bet Will never did. But this incident reminds me of that. And also in the Shazam movie, too. So anyway, Spider-Man is thinking to himself that, he's been out a long time here. But he's having fun. He figures Felicity is kind of just making dinner and stuff. So he doesn't feel like he's standing her up. Black Cat, Felicity, she shows up in the apartment. But Spider-Man's there. But the thing is, Spider-Man just got there. So when the Black Cat came back from outside, it didn't send any alarms to Spider-Man. Simply because he might not have noticed her coming back into the kitchen. Also, he had just came back himself, so he had no idea how long she was out. Spider-Man would accept the fact that, hey, maybe she got a little restless and she just wanted to do a little thing. But she's back now, and we're going to have our normal TV, home, dinner date. And then Spider-Man throws Black Cat the wine. Spider-Man's expecting her to use the I Dream of Jeannie bottle for it. Spider-Man's also asking about dinner. Felicity's saying, listen, I'm having a little trouble with it. The trouble is that she didn't start cooking it. But that's the excuse. Spider-Man doesn't really care. He wants to watch this movie, this spy movie. And Felicity just retreats into the kitchen. Gonna turn the page. And then she goes back out because she knows she knows Peter's going to be engulfed in this spy movie. So she's out. She's looking for any clues for that bottle. She's not seeing any. She's heading to the police headquarters because she was told, "Hey, listen, why don't you talk to Captain DeWolf?" So she heads to police headquarters, the station house, the police headquarters where the captain works out from under. Black Cat, she sees the captain. She sees the captain has the bottle. But she hasn't opened it up yet. She's not ready for Barbara Eden at this point. Black Cat has to figure out how to steal this from a police captain at police headquarters. This is a tough job. Now, at this point, Black Cat does have her bad luck powers, but that only works when someone is trying to do something to her. She's trying to do something to someone else. Not going to work here. And she's saying, listen, I'm practiced at stealing other people's property, just like a 1%er in training. However, this is kind of a tough nut to crack. This is like trying to take crypto cash directly from Donald Trump himself with his his 80-year-old hand clutching it. Going to turn the page. So we see Captain DeWolf. She's very beautiful here. She's probably wearing legs pantyhose here to kind of sensualize her legs, and at the same time protecting them. She knows that this bottle involves Spider-Man and the Black Cat somehow, but she doesn't really know how. Then it turns out the spy that was interacting with Black Cat earlier, shows up in her office. And the spy, this old guy, he's claiming to be a lieutenant from the CIA, and that he's coming for that flask. Black Cat realizes she's putting way too much importance on this, getting that bottle back, so her boyfriend doesn't think she's flaky. She breaks into this police captain's office, mind you, to get the bottle so she can return it, and her boyfriend won't think she's flaky. And they're kind of caught by surprise here. Captain DeWolf knows the Black Cat. She's like Felicity. She knows who this is under the mask. She's surprised by this. The CIA agent's kind of going, whoa, we're not expecting this. Gonna turn the page. So anyway, he wants the flask. The CIA lieutenant has it. The CIA lieutenant jumps out the window. Captain DeWolf is kind of surprised by this. And, excuse me. Captain DeWolf is surprised by this. The Black Cat and the CIA lieutenant, they're fighting on the rooftop here, on the ledge. The CIA lieutenant, he trips and he accidentally lets go of the bottle. The bottle's about to go 5 floors to the pavement, and it crashes. And Black Cat doesn't have a chance to grab it, and she's all upset because now she's going to have to explain how she lost Peter's gift. Peter's like, are you a complete idiot? But the thing is that Peter is like so engulfed in other things, he probably wouldn't even have noticed. She could have just simply lied and said, listen, I just put it in the cabinet. I don't want to use it now because, I have to clean it before we use it, and I have to disinfect it, and, it's kind of messy. We'll just drink from the bottle. And Felicity's upset. She's crying. It turns out the CIA lieutenant is actually someone in disguise, and it's someone that Felicity knows. I can turn the page, and I'm presuming it's a beautiful young woman. I suspect that her and Felicity kind of had a relationship. Mary Jane, for all her wildness, she's not going to say yes to having another girl in the bedroom. Gwen Stacy definitely wasn't doing that stuff. Felicity, yeah, you can probably have a threesome with her. And It looks like this is a friend of Felicity's, Tamra Blake. Again, I wasn't reading comics, so I don't know the significance of this character. And apparently, this young woman, she was there to teach Felicity a lesson. So the thing is that I don't know how if she arranged to have Peter have the flask, but she saw the flask. She stole the flask, and she was expecting Black Cat to sort of run through this maze that she created. So this time she's kind of a tester. She was testing Felicity, and the thing is, she's making a point that Felicity's showing some of the old character traits that were holding her back. That maybe she's a little immature, she takes things too seriously, and she wanted to test whether Felicity was still like that. She kind of was, and the two are having this moment. Felicity is talking about her relationship with Peter, saying she has superpowers now, but she had to go to the Kingpin for them. The Kingpin is Spider-Man's worst enemy. She really can't share this information with Peter. It would be very awkward, because Peter would be like, "Why the fuck did you do that?" But to Felicity Harding, that made sense. That made total sense. Which is why eventually Peter ended up marrying Mary Jane. Her friend is understanding. They head back to the apartment. I guess by the time they reached there, the movie was over, and all three of them are in the apartment. And it turns out Spider-Man didn't even miss the bottle, and they had a meal, and it was very nice. It turns out that her friend Tammy is still there, Tammy Blake. And I think this is where Felicity's going to bring up the threesome. Because like I said, Mary Jane's not doing that. Gwen Stacy's definitely not doing that. But Felicia, yeah, you might get a threesome. And Spider-Man is saying, score one for the normal night. And that's the end of the story. And that's the end of this comic. And that is my review of Peter Parker, The Spectacular Spider-Man, issue number 4. And I hope to have more reviews up soon. Bye.